So as of now, we discussed about extraction and loading rate. We discussed about transformation with the help of only the stored procedures, right? So that extracting, loading, and with the data ingestion, the best tool is Azure Data Factory, right? From that ADF, we haven't discussed about any transformations, right? In case we want to do the transformation, that alternative tool is stored procedure in the database, right? Database. In case if you have that any minimal transformations, right? Like we see type 1, type 2, type 3, right? Database related, happily we can do with the help of the transfer, with the help of the stored procedure. But what about your requirement? My requirement, I want to do the big data analytics. How about now? One second. I'm audible, right, Uday? Okay. But what about my big data analytics? I want to do the especially data processing for a huge amount of data. That is a big analytics. It could be batch processing. It could be real-time processing. Right. But plus I want to do the transformations, not only extractions and loading the data. In case we want to do the data ingestion, happily I can prefer the data factory. Happily I can prefer the data factory. But right, but my requirement not only data ingestion, not only data ingestion. On top of it, I want to do the data processing. I want to do the data processing. Maybe my target could be file system or my target could be table, right? In case if it is a table, right, Azure SQL database, happily I can use the stored procedure. But the stored procedure, will it is suffice for your big data analytics? All right. Will it suffice for your big analytics? Will your stored procedure will do the batch processing as well as the real-time processing? All right. Will you finish your data loads as per agreed within the SLA? The combination of batch plus real-time data processing, right? But will your stored procedure will taken care by big data analytics, all right? But always system about how you will handle in your stored procedure, because stored especially the stored procedure is especially designed for your database system, right? Because this is one of the especially component in the database point of view, in the component in the data point of view, all right? But my system, maybe my target is not a table. If it is not a table, right, the stored procedure, it will not help out, right? The stored procedure will help out for only the relational data, means mainly structured data. Maybe my source could be semi-structured, my source could be unstructured, right? My source could be unstructured. From unstructured data, I want to convert into that structure. I want to extract only specific set of attribute. Then I want to convert into either semi-structured or structured from the unstructured data. Is it possible from the database? The database especially designed for only the structured data, right? Only for the structured data. Only for the structured data, right? Not for semi-structured, not for unstructured. If it is semi-structured, on top of it, you should execute your semi-structured related, connectors, right? Will your database is having that all the semi-structured, related connectors are available, right? All the semi-structured data is available. Plus, I'm not talking about only batch processing. Maybe the combination of batch processing plus real-time data processing, right? I want to do the huge amount of data. I want to process a huge amount of data. Correct. I want to do the extraction plus transformations and loading. But, but ADF is the best tool for only the data ingestion, only for the data ingestion, because the copy activity, it will not do that any transformations. It will not do any transformation. It will not perform the detailed validations also, right? It will not perform the detailed validation. Only it will do the data ingestion from source to target system. source to target system. But what about my transformations? What about my transformations? Maybe I want to do the transformations and I want to write the data into that file system, not only table. Right. I want to write the data into that file system, but I want to perform the transformations. I want to perform the transformations. If I want to do these things, right? If I want to perform the data transformations on big data analytics, but data factory it will not help out. Data factory it will not help out. Maybe I should use the from the data factory data flow, but will your data flow will work for real-time data processing? Right? Real-time data processing. But each and every minute my data generated from the source, I want to connect with my source, then I want to perform the extraction transformations and loading. But at that time data factory it may not help out. But consider your data volume, data factory may not help out. Data factory is the best for only the data ingestion, right? Best part for only the data ingestion. Data ingestion. But I want to do the data transformation. I want to do the data transformation, especially for the big data analytics. The big data analytics could be batch processing or real-time data processing. Right? Batch processing or real-time data processing. So batch processing means maybe a specific time window you want to extract your data from the source system. It may be daily once, daily twice, daily thrice. Depends on your source system. Right? Depends on your source system extraction. Right? Depends on your source system extraction. Whenever you're extracting the data from the source system, it should not impact it to the your source. Right? During the maybe business hours, you should not extract the data. Right? Maybe offline hours or specific time window will do the data extraction. Right? Will do the data extraction. If you're doing that batch processing, right? If you're doing the batch process, your source and target, right? It may not equivalent, right? It may not equivalent. Maybe, for example, today I'm generating the data from the source side, right? Maybe the data will be available maybe next day, or maybe there's a 12 hours lag or 6 hours lag or 8 hours lag. The data 99.99% may not equal into your source versus target. That is called batch processing, right? That is called batch processing. So what about real-time data processing? The real-time data processing, the data is generated from the source. Immediately it should be available into the target system. Immediately it should be available into the target system. The lag maximum 1 minute or 5 minutes, or maximum within 30 minutes, or maybe it could be near real-time data, not a 1 day gap or 12 hours gap, right? No, not 1 day gap or 12 hours. At least maximum 30 minutes the gap between your source and a target. That is called real-time data processing. That is called real-time data processing. First of all, how can I implement the big data analytics? Big data analytics, especially in that Azure point of view. In that Azure point, in Azure, right, we can use that big data analytics implementation with the help of the Azure Data Lake Analytics. Help of the Data Lake Analytics. All right. Here we can use some USQL programming language. USQL programming language. Right. So this is especially that Azure Data Lake Analytics ADLA. ADLA. This is a Microsoft product. This is a Microsoft product. Internally, we should use some USQL program, Unified Structured Query Language. We should use to implement that Azure Data Lake Analytics. But Azure Data Lake Analytics, right? It is not having any connectors to do the data processing from the real-time data, right? So there are too many limitations on the Azure Data Lake Analytics. I mean Azure Data Lake Analytics, but this is also, I mean, best for big data analytics, but not for your real-time data. Not for real-time data. There are too many limitations on the Azure Data Lake Analytics, especially that Azure Data Lake Analytics will connect with only Azure sources, and the target is only AWS Gen 1. All right, ADLS genuine. Maybe I want to connect with SAP HANA. I want to connect with Teradata. I want to connect with any structured streaming. It could be sensors, it could be Facebook, it could be Twitter, it could be any of the system. It could be any of the system. But Azure Data Lake Analytics, it may not help out. But I can perform the big data analytics with the data should be available into that one of that Azure storage. Then I can write the data into the target system. On top of it, I can perform the complex transformations. I can build the big data analytics. but the too many limitations are available in the Azure Data Lake Analytics. This is not at all the right tool, especially if you want to do the data processing from real time, right, of other source systems. Not only Azure, but source could be anything, right? The source could be anything, but there are too many limitations on the Azure Data Lake Analytics. Azure Data Lake Analytics. Right. Moreover, this tool they're planning to decommission also. Right. They're planning to decommission. Earlier, right, earlier maybe 5, 6 years back, people had preferred only Azure Data Lake Analytics for big data analytics. For big data analytics. Right. That is only the batch processing. The real-time data also people use it to do some intermediate tools to connect with your sources and write the data into data lake. On top of it, they used Azure Data Analytics to perform the big data analytics. But there are too many limitations are in that Azure Data. Especially ADLA, Azure Data Lake Analytics tool. But what is it alternative tool, right? What is it alternative tool? Then n number of clients are raise a concerns, right? Raise a concern. Okay, if I want to move to the Azure, right, my requirement not only data ingestion, not only data ingestion, my requirement not only for batch processing, right? Not only for batch processing, my requirement, right, not only write the data into the database system. I want to write the data into the file system also, right? Already this approach is available in the on-premise. Again, why should I implement the same concept in the Azure, right? Same concept in the Azure, right? Already I have that n number of on-premise ETL tools are available, like Informatica, Data Stage, Ab Initio, SAP BODS. There are many tools are available, Oracle Data Integrator. Right? Happily, I can do the data ingestion, data processing with the help of those tools. Those are the best for batch processing. Those are best for batch processing. Again, right, why should I implement the same concept into the cloud, right? If I want to do the data ingestion, right, I will do the data factory. Yes, I can write the data to file system, right? On top of it, I can use the stored procedures to convert the data into the database, right? This exercise is especially best for batch processing. But what about the real-time data processing? This real-time data also, right, the real-time data also, I want to do that my analytics, right? I want to do that analytics, right? I can generate my real-time data. I can dump the data into the database with the help of that on-premise also, but not immediate analytics. Right? Not I'm doing that immediate analytics. Still, the real-time data is generating. On top of it, I'm doing the same again the batch processing stories only. But I want to do that immediately. Whatever the data is generated within the 5 minutes, I want to send the data to my Power BI system. I want to perform that analytics. I want to perform that analytics maximum maybe the 30 minutes lag, right? Maximum the 30 minutes lag. But I don't want to extend more than 30 minutes. Everything I want to complete my analytics within the 30 minutes for the real-time data processing. Definitely your on-premise systems, it will not help out to your real-time data processing. There are too many limitations on your, especially on-premise systems also. Maybe one or two ETL tools will perform the your real-time data processing. Still, there are too many limitations on your, especially on-premise ETL tools. That even the Azure Data Lake Analytics also not right tool for do the data processing from real time because there is no direct connectors to connect with your real time systems, right? Real time systems. So maybe yes, I want to connect with my SAP HANA. Right, maybe SAP HANA, the backend it is connecting with SAP ECC, it is doing the real time replication. But the data immediately I want to do that analytics. Immediately I want to do that analytics. Maybe within 30 minutes gap, I want to bring the data to, from the HANA. On top of it, I want to perform the transformation. I want to send the data to maybe my Power BI or maybe Azure SQL DB or DW or Azure Analysis Service. Within 30 minutes, I want to finish my end-to-end processing. If I'm considering the Azure Data Factory or at Azure Data Factory, again, the data factory will read the data from the HANA, write the data into the data lake. On top of it, I can consider Azure Data Lake Analytics, perform the transformation. I want to send the data to, again, ADLS. On top of it, I want to perform the transformations with the help of the data lake analytics, right? Write the data to ADLS Gen 1. On top of it, I want to implement the data to stored procedures. Right? Why should I create these many layers? Right? Why should I create these many layers? Right? but I want to do that immediate analytics, right? The real-time data, I want to do that immediate analytics, right? For immediate analytics means why should I bring the data into these many layers, right? Let me bring the data into the only ADLS, right? Then on top of it, immediately I want to perform that analytics, right? I want to perform the immediate analytics. I want to send the data to maybe structured data database or DW. On top of it, I want to build my Power BI reports. So these kind, I mean, if you want to perform these many kinds of layers, right? Maybe you may not finish your process within 30 minutes, all right? Because you're using the n number of tools, right? You're using the n number of tools. You're using the n number of tools. So can't we use it only the single tool? Can't we only the single tool to do the real-time data processing from any of the systems? Any of the system? Do we have the connectors to connect with any of the system? But because Azure Data Lake Analytics is not a right tool. It's not a right tool. Even the data factory also, if we want to connect with especially any real-time data systems, right? Data factory is the best for only do the data processing for structured data, right? Structured data. The semi-structured data, just you can do the copy paste, right? You can do the copy paste. From the unstructured data, I want to convert into the semi-structured, structured. ADF it will not help out because you're not performing that any transformation, right? From that ADF we can use that binary copy, right? We can do the binary copy or right to do the especially data ingestion as is, right? As is we can do that with help of the binary copy. But in your requirement is unstructured data, I want to convert into the structure or semi-structured. It's not possible from the ADF, right? But Azure Data Lake Analytics is not the right tool, right? It is only for structured data only. Data. Moreover, the data should be available into that only that Azure storage. But only here the problem, the real-time data processing, right? Real-time data processing. Even if it is a batch processing also, again I should dependent on my Azure Data Factory. Data ingestion, then the transformation, I can use that Azure Data Lake Analytics, right? Then Microsoft is having the concerns, right? Microsoft is having their problem, right? The customers are may not happy, right? Customers are may not happy, right? Again, the same solution I can implement with the help of that on-premise. With the help of that on-premise, maybe from that on-premise also, I can write the data into my Azure storage. Let me go with on-premise tools. Right? Why should I use that Azure services? Let me use that on-premise tools. Let me write the data into that Azure storage. I can build the transformations in with the help of that on-premise also. If it is a structured solution only, right? Let me go with only on-premise solutions, right? From that either ETL, any ETL tool. If the tool is having their connectors to deploy the data into that Azure storage, right? I can perform the transformation. I can write that my final output into Azure Data Lake Storage, or I can upload the data into the raw data or transformation data into Azure storage with the help of that on-premise. Right? Why should I use these many tools into that Azure storage? Right? Let me use only for storage point of view, not for analytics point of view. Let me do that analytics into that only on-premise system. Right? Then people it may not prefer into that Azure, right? People may not prefer into that Azure services. People will prefer other services, right? Because their requirement maybe they want to do the especially data science related stuff, right? Analytics related, right? Some ad hoc executions, right? Batch processing plus real-time data processing. So they have the n number of use cases, maybe n number of use cases they want to implement into the cloud, right? In case if they want to prefer Azure, right? Azure is having too many limitations, right? Azure is having too many limitations to perform the big data analytics. But again, why should I use the same Hadoop concept? I don't want to use that big Hadoop concept, right? I don't want to use the HDFS system, HDFS. I don't want to use the HDFS tools. I want to use the other tools, which should fit for big data analytics, right? The tool name is called Databricks. The tool name is Databricks. But Databricks is not a Microsoft product, right? It is not a Microsoft product, right? The owner also Databricks only. The owner also Databricks. But how can I use the Databricks tool in Azure, correct? So I mean, she'll be dependent on any third-party service, right? Because your Azure provider is not having the right ETL tool to perform the big data analytics. Maybe batch processing we can use, especially stored procedure or SQL DW, right? But what about real-time data processing, right? What about real-time data processing? What about my big data analytics? But what about my n number of source systems connectors? Right? These are the limitations, right? These are the limitations. Right? The limitations, right? In case if you go and approach to Microsoft, they are suggesting go and use the data factory to do the data ingestion, right? On top of it, use the Azure Data Lake Analytics to perform the transformation. Again, write the data into data lake. That on top of it, use the stored procedure to write the data into the Azure SQL DB or DW. SQL DB or DW only for structured. But what about semi-structured? What about unstructured data? They don't have solution. That they don't have solution. They're suggesting to their customer use some third-party tools. If I want to use the third-party tools, so why should you use the Azure services? Can't you provide the all the solution into that one pack? Right? The customers are raising no. We are mainly concentrated on the big data analytics, not for batch processing. Right? We are mainly interested in batch processing plus real-time data processing. The will your service will help out to perform this combination. My source system could be anything. My source system could be anything. Do you have the connectors to connect with my source system? Right. But Databricks is the right tool, especially for the big data analytics, especially for big data analytics, because it is a Spark analytics tool, right? It is a Spark analytics tool. Analytics tool, right? It is a Spark analytics tool, especially for only the big data analytics or big data engineering point of view. Databricks is the right tool. But Databricks is not a Microsoft product. It is a third party product. Right? It is a Spark analytics tool. Moreover, this tool is especially designed for the big data analytics. But how can I use the Databricks in Azure? It's a third party service, right? It's a third party service. So it is third party service, right? It is third party service. And then Microsoft decided, yes, we want to use one good ETL tool to perform the big data analytics. Our ETL tool is having some limitations. Our ETL tool is having the limitations. Yes, we can do the big data analytics, but not for all the use cases. Not for all the use. So what is the alternative? In that market, the right tool is the Databricks. But then Microsoft decided, can't we collaborate with the Databricks, right? We both will work and release one product. The product will use in that Azure ecosystem to perform the big data analytics, right? That is called Azure Databricks. Then Microsoft builds the Databricks collaboratively, right? Collaboratively work together, and they launched one product. They launched one product. The product name is called Azure Databricks. Azure Databricks. Even the Databricks also need market, right? Because especially this is a, I mean, tool for any of the big data analytics. You can use the Databricks in AWS. You can use the Databricks for your Hadoop ecosystem. You can use this big Databricks for big data analytics. All right. Any ecosystem, not only Azure, even AWS also. Right, people will prefer the Databricks to perform the big data analytics. Even Hadoop also, they will use the Databricks to perform the big data analytics. Even other systems also, they may use the Databricks for big data analytics, right? Even the Azure ecosystem, I want to use the Databricks. I want to use the Databricks, right? I want to take that all the features of the Databricks, plus I want to add some additional features in the Databricks. The additional features, especially, it should fit for only Azure ecosystems. Azure ecosystems. Alright, maybe I want to connect with Azure Data Lake storage. I should connect with my blob storage. I should connect with my Azure SQL DB or DW or Cosmos DB or Cosmos DB. Right? With the Azure Databricks, the backend, the Spark tables also, I should connect from the data factory. From the ADF also, I want to execute my Databricks notebooks. Databricks notebook. This is a very, very important point. I should connect with my Key Vault concept. Alright, I should use my Azure Active Directory. Alright, Azure Active Directory to provide the especially access levels. Alright, access level 3. I want to add some additional features into the Databricks. Right, the best from Azure, the best from the Databricks. Right, then but Team from the Microsoft, the team from the Databricks collaboratively, they work together and they launch one product that is called Azure Databricks. But Databricks is not a Microsoft product, but collaboratively they added some additional feature. Best of Microsoft, best of the Databricks. They launch, they redesigned one product that is called Azure Databricks. That is called Azure Databricks. You can use the Azure Databricks for structured data, semi-structured data, unstructured data. 99 percentage you can use, you can connect with any of the source system. It is possible. It is possible to connect to any of the systems. If it is not possible, then we'll think about the alternative. Alternative means, do we have that any REST API calls? Do we have that any ODBC connector, or do we have that any JDBC connectors to connect with your source systems? Right? That is one of the advantage of the Databricks. Not only for batch processing, not only for batch processing, with the help of the Databricks or Azure Databricks, you can read the data from structured data, semi-structured data, unstructured data. Right? You can read the data from batch processing or real-time data processing. You can write the data to database or file system, or semi-structured data also. You can write the data into your target system. Even you can write the data into your unstructured file also possible. Any type of data, any type of data, if you want to perform the big data analytics, right, will prefer the Databricks. You can write the data into any of the system. Not only for Azure, you can write the data, right? Not only that Azure connect, Azure component, consider the target system. It depends on your requirement. It depends on your requirement. You can write the data into any of the system. Any of the system. Even you can write the data into, I mean, from the Databricks Amazon S3 also it is possible. Alright, from the Azure Databricks, you can write the data into your Cosmos DB also possible. Alright, Cosmos DB also possible. Even you can write the data into Azure SQL DB, DW also possible. You can write the data to blob storage, ADLs, Gen1, Gen2 also possible. Even you can write the data into your Spark tables also possible. Even you can connect with your SAP HANA system. Even you can connect with your Oracle Teradata. All right, you can connect with any of the sources, right, to bring the data, data ingestion, transformation, and send the data into the target system also possible. All right, I mean, with the help of the only the single tool, you can perform the data ingestion, you can perform the transformation, you can perform the analytics, and send the output into your target system. In case if you are worried about the only real-time data processing, right, you're worried about only real-time data processing, happily we can use the Azure Databricks. Right, happily we can use the Databricks. Right, you can connect with your, for example, I'm talking about SAP HANA. Right, already with help of that SLT, they are extracting the data from that SAP ECC, just as SAP ECC, and they're doing the real-time replication. Whatever the data is available that HANA, they want to do that analytics immediately into that Power BI systems. Or at Power BI systems. In case if I'm not using the data factory, for example, if I'm not using the Databricks, what is the solution? Again, I should use the Azure Data Factory, right? Then on top of it, I want to convert the data into that ADLS, right? Then I want to perform the transformations, right? I want to perform the transformations. Maybe I will use the stored procedures, right? I will use the stored procedures. I will write the data into that Azure SQL DB, right? On top of it, I can use that Power BI report, right? I can use that Power BI report, right? Here's the problem, right? Will a stored procedure perform the complex transformations, right? Will you finish your transformations within that agreed SLA? Agreed SLA. Alright. Agreed. Because this data is available immediately, right? This is a real-time replication. Real-time replication. Again, your data factory will connect with your HANA every 5 minutes. You should do the data ingestion. Alright, you should do the data ingestion. On top of it, you should perform the transformations. On top of it, you should perform the transformation. Then you should send the data to your Power BI system. That you should send the data to your Power BI system. Is it possible? That is it possible? Otherwise, for example, I'm not using that ADLS directly from that ADF. I'm connecting with HANA, writing the data into the Azure SQL DB. But what about your transformations? Yeah, data ingestion, right? Data ingestion. Every 5 minutes, will you finish your SAP HANA? Maybe it could be 100 tables or 30 tables or 50 tables. It could be master data. It could be transactional data. Every 5 minutes or maybe every 15 minutes, we have to finish this process, right? At any case, the data should be available to the Power BI within 15 minutes. Once we posted one document in ECC, within 15 minutes, the data should be available into the Power BI, because in between you're using a number of tools, right? In between you're using the, so this is your final product, this is your final product, Power BI. But in between you're writing the data to ADLS and Azure SQL DB. Here you're performing the transformations, right? If you're not performing the transformations, right, we may finish within the 15 minutes, right? We may finish in the 15 minutes, but consider a number of objects are available. But how you will perform the 10 number of objects in the stored procedure in their parallel, right? In that parallel, is it possible to perform the concurrent executions, right? Not only sequentials, you have to do the concurrent executions. But in the stored procedures, right? In the stored procedure, if I'm considering the while loop or for loop, everything is a sequence, right? Everything is a sequence. Maybe in the ADF we can talk about parallel executions, right? Multiple objects, so we can do the data copy into the ADLS. From the stored procedure, will you create a number of stored procedure? 30 tables means 30 stored procedure will you create to perform that Azure SQL DB. But what about your modeling? Right? What about your modeling? How about your dimension tables and factor relationship? Is it possible to finish all the complex transformations within 15 minutes? Then why should I do the data warehousing? Why should I build them a model if it is a real-time data? If it is a real-time data as is, I want to dump the data into the Power BI. Only the basic transformations, the basic transformation. But within 15 minutes, is it possible? But if it is not possible, what is the alternative? Right? What is the alternative system? Right? What is the alternative system? So we'll use the Azure Databricks also, right? From the Databricks also, it is possible to connect with your SAP HANA. Or to connect with your SAP HANA, we can do the data processing from multiple SAP HANA tables. We can do the concurrent executions. We can do the concurrent executions, right? We can write the data to either ADLS or Azure SQL DB, right? Either ADLS or Azure SQL DB. Within 5 minutes, we can finish the transformations. Right? Complex transformation also, we can finish. We can send the data into the Power BI. Right, the same, right here also within the same notebook, I can do the raw data. On top of it, I can perform the Azure SQL DB. With the help of the single notebook, I can finish my all the processing. I can finish my all the processing, right? Because this tool is best for your big data analytics. Best for your big data analytics. Right, once the document is posted at ECC, immediately the document will be turned into the Power BI. Within 5 minutes, within the 10 minutes also, we can finish. 99%. In case if you're worried about the transformations, I'm not worried about the transformations, right? I'm not worried about transformations. But data is available in the ECC. But data is available in the ECC. But do we have the connectors to connect with ECC, right? From the Azure point of view, right? The stream analytics, right? The stream analytics, we don't have any ECC connector. We don't have any HANA connectors. Right, we don't have any HANA connector. If I'm using that ADF, but how can I do the real-time processing? Every 1 minute or every 2 minutes, right? Every second I want to connect with ECC. It's not possible from that ADF, right? It's not possible from that ADF because we have that event trigger, but event trigger only it will work for blob file, right? Once the data is available in ECC, how can I bring? That's why they are using that as alternative tool SAP SLT to do the real-time replications. But if the data is available in the real-time replication from the ADF again, you will talk about batch processing only, right? But near real-time data processing you're talking about. Maybe every 15 minutes you're doing the data ingestion, data processing, and finally you will send the data to Power BI. But within 15 minutes it's not possible, right? Within 15 minutes because of some transformation, not complex transformation, some intermediate transformations. But it is not possible, right? It is not possible. Means we may not we may not accommodate that Power BI ratio within the 15 minutes, right? We may not achieve our SLA, right? The best tool is the Databricks. The Databricks is especially designed for the big data analytics, huge amount of data. If you're dealing with a huge amount of data, the Databricks is the right tool, especially for real-time data processing, or structured streaming, right, or semi-structured streaming, or if you want to perform that unstructured, any type of data, if you want to perform that analytics, right, if you want to perform analytics, Databricks is the right tool. Databricks is not only for data engineering, not only for data engineering. Databricks tool is, right, it's best fit for your data analytics, data scientist, as well as data engineering. If you want to maintain the proper collaboration between the multiple teams, then Databricks is the right tool. Databricks is the right tool. With the help of the only the single tool, we can maintain the proper collaboration between multiple downstream systems or multiple teams, like data engineers, data analytics, as well as data scientist. Data scientist. Right? All these three teams can use the same Databricks tool. Right? They can do their own use cases. They can implement their own use cases with the help of the single Databricks tool. With help of the single Databricks tool, no need to use the multiple tools to implement the use cases. Right? With the help of the only the single tool, they can implement multiple use cases. You can maintain the proper collaboration between all the team members. With all the team members. That is also one of the advantage in the Databricks. That's why people will choose, right, data big data, especially Databricks best for the big data analytics, especially in the Azure or in the cloud system. If you learn Databricks, right, if you learn Databricks, you can easily get the job in AWS also, right? Because Databricks is also one of the especially good tool for good tool in AWS also. If they want to do that any big data analytics, right? Still AWS team also they're preferring the Databricks. But one of the component they're using the Databricks only. But still they are using their own tools, but they are using the Databricks also. They're using the Databricks. They're using the Databricks. Even Azure point of view, right? Azure point of view, we want to perform the big data analytics 100%. They have the solution only the Databricks. They have the only solution for the Databricks. In case if they want to do the only data ingestion, not transformation, right? Then only people will prefer the ADF. If they want to do their batch processing or at batch processing, still on batch processing also, they want to implement the big data analytics, right? Still they're preferring the Databricks only. Still they're preferring the Databricks. If they want to implement the real-time data processing, right? They have that option only the Databricks. They have that option for only if they want to implement the real-time or near real-time data also, still they are using the Azure Databricks. If you want to implement that any big data analytics, right? It is big because the Databricks is a Spark-based system, right? It is a Spark-based analytics which is designed for your big data analytics. Big data analytics. Right, one of the advantage why should we prefer the especially Databricks, right? Right. For example, Pawan is having the very good knowledge on the Python, right? He's very good at having knowledge on the Python. For example, Jagdish is having the good knowledge on one of the big data analytics, that is a scalar programming. Right? That is a scalar programming language. Uday is having good knowledge on the R programming. R programming. For example, Suresh is having very good knowledge on SQL. Any SQL. Any SQL. So there are multiple team members are available. Multiple team members are available. But he wants to use his own big data analytics, right? Not big data analytics, maybe analysis, right? He wants to perform the analytics with help of the Python programming language. Jagdish wants to perform the big data analytics, right? Basically, he wants to use the Spark program, Spark process engine. Right, the Spark engine designed by the Scala programming language. Scala programming language. He wants to do the automation. He wants to perform the condition statement. Basically, he wants to use the, especially the big data analytics with help of the Spark. But we need one language, right? Then he's using the Scala programming language. Uday, for example, he's a data scientist. He's using the R programming language. Suresh is having a very good knowledge on SQL. He's using the SQL. Right? There are multiple team members are available, but they are using their own programming language. They are using their own programming language, right? But how can I implement these all for programming languages, right? All programming language. Will your tool support all programming language? Because he is writing that Python, right? how my tool will support Python, Scala, or SQL, right? This is for data scientist. He wants to perform some kind of relational operations. He wants to execute. He wants to perform the especially big data analytics, right? Hadoop related or big data analytics or Spark procedure or Spark framework. He wants to use. He need one language. He's using the Scala, but he's using Python programming language for data analysis. Data. Moreover, I want to use all four programming languages in my one tool. But how can I use this all four programming language in the one tool? Maybe 40% Python, 30% Scala, right? 20% SQL, 10% R program. If I want to implement one use case, right? If I want to implement one use case, I need these four programming languages. I need one. I need four programming languages because yes, from the scalar, I want to send out. I want to execute my stored procedures. I want to execute my stored procedure. I want to return that output. I want to return that output. Right. I want to execute my Azure SQL DB or DW stored procedures. I want to execute the stored procedure. I want to return that output. That on from the written output, I want to perform the some calculations or validations. Correct. From the Python, yes, I want to do my data analysis. Maybe I want to use my PySpark programming. Right. Maybe I want to use that R programming language to build one model. Right. I want to use that SQL to perform the proper relational queries. Relational query for programming languages. Means basically I want to go with single tool. The single tool should support for all these four programming languages. Right? I want to the Python, Scala, or SQL. Depends on my requirement. But my use case is bit complexity, right? Bit complexity. At any cost, I have to use these four programming languages. Why I'm using only one programming languages? Because the Python is right. The Python maybe I don't have the right connectors to execute stored procedure to return that output. Right. I don't have the right connectors to implement one of that model. I don't have the right I mean connector to perform the my relational database operations. All right, relational operations. That's why I'm using the multiple tools, right? But I want to use that only single tool, right? I want to use the single tool or single service, right? Single service or single tool or single resource. The single resource should support multi-language, right? Right. Multi-language support. Multi-language support, right? Multi-language support, right? The tool name is called Databricks because Databricks is a tool, right? Databricks is a tool, right? If you want to execute your Databricks code, you have to use any of the programming language. You have to use any of the programming language, either Python or Scala or R or SQL. Any of the programming language you should select to execute your Databricks code or your Azure Databricks code. So it is a multi-language. Any programming language you can select either Python, right? Yes, if you select the Python, right, means your entire Databricks code you're executing that extension is .python, .py. If you're executing your Azure Databricks code, the default language you have selected Scala means the extension .scala means your entire code you're planning to write in the Scala programming language. If you're selecting your Azure Databricks R means yes, you're selecting R programming language .r extension or .scala. Means you want to create four individual notebooks, right, to perform that use case. But my requirement only the single use case, right? Why should I use the four use cases, right? Why should I use the four notebooks? So can't we use the single notebook to implement these four languages? Yes, it will support multi-language also. It will, within the single notebook, you can use these four languages. You can use these four languages. You can call out from the Python or from the notebook. You can execute your Scala code also, or you can call out. You can execute the Scala notebook also. You can execute that R notebook also. Within the same notebook, you can implement these four languages. That is also one of the feature is available in the Databricks. It is basically it is a multi-language support. Basically it is a multi-language. Any language you can select, whether you will select Python your entire use case, or at majority Python, the rest of things you want to implement the features in the Scala or SQL also possible, or Python plus Scala also possible, Python plus SQL also possible, Python plus R also possible, or Scala plus SQL also possible. Depends on your use case. It depends on your use case, right? If your use case, one of the process you want to implement, the logic is not available in the Python, so what is that alternative? That alternative maybe it is available in the Scala. Let me go and use the Scala. Ultimately I want to finish my use case, right? I want to finish my use case design. I don't want to dependent on if the solution is not available in the Python, right? Not on the Python, immediately I'll think about the alternative, right? Why should I think about only Python? Let me think about in the Scala. Let me think about in SQL. Let me think about in R. If it is possible, let me go and use these any programming language. Alright, let me integrate my solution in one of the language. But your tool should support, right? If I'm using the Databricks, your tool should support. Yes, my tool will support for multi-language support. Right, Databricks, it will support multi-language. Any of the tool and any of the language you can select to implement your use case. That is also one of the reason people will prefer Databricks. People will prefer the Databricks for big data analytics or any data engineering point of view, or data scientist point of view, or data analytics point of view also. You can take alright Databricks. You can consider Databricks for your big data analytics or data engineering or data analytics or data scientist. But moreover, you can maintain the proper collaboration between the multiple teams, right? Data engineering or data processing, data analytics or data scientist. But all the team members will use the Databricks workspace. They can implement their use case, right? They can, all the team members can maintain the proper collaboration, right? Proper collaboration, right? Proper collaboration also they can maintain. The data scientists also directly they will use the Databricks to do the to build their own models either with the help of the Python programming or R programming. The data analytics, right? The data analytics they will use right either Python or SQL or Scala programming language. Right? The data engineer they can use either Python programming language or Scala programming language or SQL programming language to perform the especially data engineering activity or data processing activity or ETL activities, right? Or ETL activities, right? If you're from that ETL background, right? ETL background, Databricks is a Databricks is a ETL 2.2. ETL 2.0. Why ETL 2.0? Because it will process batch plus real-time data processing. Databricks is an ETL tool. It is also ETL tool. You want to perform the proper transformation or data extraction, transformations and loading for batch processing as well as real-time data processing. Real-time. That's why people will call out Databricks is the ETL 2.0. The traditional ETL tools are ETL 1.0. Right, that modern ETL tool is the Databricks is a modern ETL tool. Right, you can perform batch processing as well as the real-time data processing. Complete that ETL instructions you can execute. Right, extraction, transformations, loading from batch processing or real-time data processing. Huge amount of data, petabytes data also you can process. Petabytes data also you can process because your tool will take in care automatically the performance optimization also. That is also one of the advantage. But still the Databricks, the backend, it will use the Spark only. The backend, it will use the Spark. There's the same, the Spark team only implemented the Databricks. The Spark team, right, they implemented the Spark, they hand over to the Apache, right? They hand over to the Apache. They developed one more product. The product name is the Databricks. The backend, the Databricks also will use that only the Spark framework or Spark process engine to to perform the your data processing. Still your Databricks also will use the backend, the Spark framework only. The Spark framework with the help of that these all four languages. Either any of the languages or four languages also they can use to execute the Spark framework. Right? Or Spark, right? I mean Spark SQL, right? Spark SQL, Scala combination Spark or Python Spark means PySpark also they can use inside the Databricks. So Databricks is a service or tool that backend, at the backend everything implemented with the help of the Spark framework or Spark process engine with the help of this any of the tool. So these are the reasons we should select the especially Databricks. Any doubts? Right. In case if you consider any ETL architecture, right? Any ETL architecture, right? If you want to perform that ETL, earlier, yes, earlier we had used the Spark, right? Especially for big data analytics and point of view. Big data analytics, it could be batch processing or real-time processing. People had preferred the especially Spark. That initial version was Hadoop, right? Initial version was Hadoop. Hadoop not best for real-time data processing, only for batch processing, huge amount of data, right? Hadoop means it is a big data, right? Hadoop is the big data, right? Nowadays, people are not preferring that Hadoop HDFS, right? People are preferring cloud system. It could be AWS or it could be Azure, right? It could be Azure. But how can I implement the big data analytics, right? We want to implement the big data analytics, right? We'll use the database. Earlier solution was Spark, right? After Hadoop, the solution was the Spark only. The solution was the Spark. With help of the Spark, we can do the proper ETL instructions, ETL stuff with help of the Spark process engine, maybe with the help of the Scala programming language, with the help of the Scala program. I mean, 5 6 years back, people 90% preferred Spark plus Scala combination because why people preferred especially Scala for big data analytics. Scala programming language developed the Spark because especially Spark designed by the Scala programming language. It's a more native, right? It's a more native. I mean, 5 to 6 years back, right? If you're having any performance issues, if you go and approach the Databricks team, right? People always suggest go and use the Scala programming language. At least you'll get some good, good performance from the Scala programming language compared to the other tools. Earlier we don't have the PySpark concept. We have that only the Spark combination, right? Spark and Scala combinations. 5 years back, if the Databricks read 90% use cases implemented by the Scala programming language, very few use cases implemented by the Python. But nowadays, right, PySpark is available. Means Python plus Spark is available. Right, Python plus Spark is available. Is we can use the right PySpark connectors or PySpark APIs to perform the your big data analytics or your data processing. Nowadays, people are preferring only the Python programming language. But few use cases, yes, people are preferring the Scala, but majority use cases, right, majority use cases, people are preferring the Python. Right, 90 percentage nowadays the Databricks people are preferring that only Python programming language. Still, we can use the Scala also, right? In my project, if you want to execute the stored procedures, we are using the Scala programming language. But the 90 percentage, right, operations, right, implementation, right, by Python programming language, or we are using the SQL also. If you want to perform the relational point of view, that select statement, the complex SQL joins, right, subqueries, core subqueries, the analytical functions, right, we are using the SQL. If you want to implement the core SQL portion, right, core SQL portions, right, we can implement with the help of that SQL. But majority that API connections we are using the Python, or at the 10 percentage we are using the Scala programming language. A data scientist, right, they may use either Python or R programming language. R programming language, right? Yet, if you observe, so why should I use the Azure Databricks? This is was the earlier solution. If you see this Spark, not a Databricks, right? Not a Databricks. We want to do the proper data processing, right? Proper data processing. It could be structured, unstructured, or semi-structured. Earlier, people had preferred the Spark for the big data processing, right? Big data analytics or big data processing. The earlier solution. The source could be anything, right? The source could be anything. Could be structured data, semi-structured data, or unstructured data. With the help of that ETL or ELT, we'll connect with all these sources. Or all these sources, we can directly deploy the data into that Azure storage, or directly will use the Spark as the ETL or ELT tool to connect with the source system and processing the data, and finally write the data to again your Azure cloud storage. From that Azure cloud storage, we can write the data to your database or data warehousing. All right. or with the help of the Spark only directly we can write the data to your data warehousing system. Here the data warehousing could be your Azure SQL DB or DW, right? On top of it we can build that your enterprise model, right? That cube you can build, that model you can build inside the enterprise model. Then you can connect with your reporting system, right? You can connect with your reporting system. Otherwise, with help of the Spark, we can take the data from the storage and write the data to DW and write the data to your enterprise model also possible. Right? If you see that information consumers, right? Because they are the especially not technical people, they're always dependent on your IT system that design the reports, right? Always they will consume only those reports. Right? They're not the 100% technical people, right? They know how to see the data from the reporting system, how to do that analysis, right? They will not implement their own solution. If you see the power users, right? So they're core technical people, right? Core technical people, right? They may use that Spark, they may use any Azure technologies, right? They can use their own Python programming language or their own programming language. They can build their own calculations. They can build their own calculations. They may take the data from the storage, they will use the Spark, they will use the DW, right? Or DB. They can build their own calculations. They don't want to dependent on IT solution, right? They don't want dependent on this IT solution. They want to build their own solution, right? They want to build own even the basic users also, right? They may use Power BI or they may use that Excel system to connect with these one of the storage. They can also do their own self-reporting. These power users are more technical people. I mean, power user equivalent to your data scientist or your champion users. They can do their own analytics. But ultimately, they need only data. But only they need data. They don't want to connect with again the same source system. Already the data is available. Right? Again, why should I connect the source systems? Because these are heterogeneous, right? Heterogeneous because already data is available in the homogeneous system, right? Let me extract the data from the homogeneous. Let me avoid one step, right? Let me avoid this one step to extract the data from the source. Already data is available. Let me take this data. Let me build my own analytics. I don't want to dependent on any of the system, right? Any of the system. Let me take the raw data, or let me take the processed data, or let me take that model data. Let me build my own models, right? Let me build my own model. Let me build my own analytics. That basic users, right? They know Power BI, they know Excel. They need only data, but they can do the self-reporting. That information consumers, they're not technical people. Always they will dependent on that IT system solution because they hear that IT system, they build the proper reporting system, right? Proper reporting system. Always this information consumers will dependent on your reporting solutions. They will not do their self-reporting. Maybe 5 percentage they can do the self-reporting, right? But 99.9 percentage they will blindly dependent on that IT system solution because these are standard reports, right? These are the standard reports. Always they wants to consume only the standard reports. Power user, they can build their own model, they can build their own analytics, but they need data. That basic user, they can connect with Excel or Power BI. But here, if you observe the entire diagram, the majority data processing that ETL stuff, right, with help of the Spark, with help of the Spark, right? But nowadays, especially in the cloud system, right, cloud system, people are not preferring the Spark. Yes, people may prefer the Spark, but majority, right, majority use cases implementing with the help of the Databricks. Your Databricks as a backend still using the Spark. Only the Spark replace with the Databricks. The rest of the solution is same. The rest of the solution is same. Only the Spark replaced with the Databricks. But earlier the solution was with the help of the I mean with help of the Spark. Now the current solution with the help of the Databricks. Still Databricks means the backend still you're using the Spark or PySpark. But if you want to perform that ETL or ELT big data analytics, right? Instead of the Spark, people will prefer the Databricks. People will prefer the Databricks. But Azure Databricks, in case if you're talking about Azure Cloud Storage, we are using the Azure Databricks. Azure Databricks means best of Microsoft, best of the Databricks, right? The both come collaboratively, they design one product that is called Azure Databricks. They had taken the best features from the Azure. The best features means Azure Key Vault, maybe Azure Active Directory, log analytics, right? They want to do the mounting on blob storage or ADLS, Gen 1 or Gen 2. But these are the best services of the Microsoft. Right? These services they want to integrate it in the Databricks, right? They want to integrate it in the Databricks, right? They collaboratively design one product that is called Azure Databricks, right? If it is especially this architecture, if they're talking about Azure Cloud Storage, right? The tool name is called Azure Databricks for data processing for big data analytics. All right, here that ELT, it could be data factory, right? The ELT could be data factory to ingest the data from source. If they want to do the data processing, they will prefer the especially Azure Databricks. Or from the Azure Databricks, still we can write the data to Azure SQL DB or DW also possible, or cloud storage also possible. The same, the previous diagram, right? The Spark replaced with the Databricks. The rest of things are same, right? So this is the kind of write up. Why should I use it Azure Databricks? The basically, right? ELT, right? Processing and machine learning means data scientist, data analytics, and data engineers, right? Data engineers, if they want to implement that all the combination, right? Huge amount of data, right? Huge amount of data. People will prefer that Databricks or Azure Databricks. So this Apache Spark based platform runs a distributed system behind the scenes, meaning the workload is automatically split across various processing and scale up and scale down on demand. So this is also one of the feature is available in the Databricks. Depends on your workload. If you deals with 1 GB data, or at 1 GB data automatically, it will reduce the number of cluster. If you deals with huge amount of data, automatically it will increase the resources. It will increase the resource, right? The, the scale up, scale down option also available. The scale up, scale down option also, scale in, scale out also available, right? In all the Azure sources, that is that advantage, right? The scale up and scale down. In the database point of view, you will increase your DTUs, right? Increase your DTUs means scale up, right? Decrease the DTUs means scale down, right? In the SQL DW also the same, right? Your data warehousing units or your compute data warehousing units, you can increase or you can decrease that. In the runtime also, with the help of that any PowerShell also, you can increase, you can decrease. But in the Databricks, so no need to write any complex programs to scale up and scale down. Right, scale up and you should select that option. You should select that option, auto scaling option. If you're selecting that auto scaling, automatically depends on your input. It will increase the number of workers. Right, it will decrease the number of workers. Depends on your input. That is also one of the advantage in the Databricks. That is also one of the advantage in the Databricks. Right, the reasons, right? Why should I select this 100% question? Right, the first one, familiar language and environment. Use R programming, SQL or Scala, any programming language you can use to implement your use case. Right, collaboration, right? You can connect with any of the downstream systems. Right, all the systems can work as the collaboration fashion, right? Integrates easily with all Microsoft stack because this is a Azure Databricks, right? Because best of Microsoft to best of the Databricks, right? That is called Azure Databricks. Even you can connect with your Azure Key Vault. Azure Key Vault is a Microsoft product, right? Databricks separate product. But how can I connect with my Azure Key Vault? Because now the product is Azure Databricks, right? The product is Azure Databricks. If I want to connect with the Key Vault, right? If I want to connect with the Key Vault, I should not follow the complex process, right? It should easily connect with my all the Azure component. It could be Cosmos DB, it could be Azure SQL DB, DW, Blob Storage, ADLS Gen 1 or ADLS Gen 2. Right, from that ADF, I want to connect with my Spark tables. From that ADF, I want to execute my Databricks because I want to use the ADF as a scheduler. Right? ADF as a scheduler because my end-to-end data loads, right? Data orchestration, right? Orchestration. I'm using ADF, right? The schedulers I'm using ADF. I don't want to use the multiple tools to schedule my all the products, right? I want to use the only single scheduler because I want to do that end-to-end data processing from source to till Power BI. I want to use only the single tool. I mean the single tool, right? 99% of people will prefer that ADF. From that ADF, how can I execute my Databricks code? Both are two different services, right? Or it means here integrates easily with all Microsoft stack. Means from that ADF, alright, can easily execute my Databricks notebook. Alright. Extensive list of the data sources, any sources, right? If you consider any sources, we have the connectors, right, to read the data. Alright. So this is one of the good point, extensive documentation and support available, right? They're providing detailed documentation about the Databricks, each and every feature. So the detail described in the documentation, but moreover you'll get the 100% support from the Microsoft, either the Databricks. Even if you raise the ticket also to Microsoft, they're responsible immediately. They will connect with the Databricks team. In case if you have that any issues, right, maximum what you will do, you will raise the ticket to only Microsoft, right? You will not raise the ticket to Databricks, right? The Databricks responsibility to work with the Databricks to raise all that issues. To resolve that issues. The first point is very, very important to support multi-language environment. That's why people are preferring one of the reason Databricks. That simple term is what is Azure Data? It is a ETL tool. It is a ETL tool. Databricks is an Apache Spark based analytics platform optimized for Microsoft Azure Cloud Services. Right? You can do the some distributed data processing also. You can do the distributed data processing. Azure Databricks is a fast, easy, and collaborative Apache Spark-based analytics service. For a big data pipeline, the data raw or structured, right? It could be semi-structured, unstructured, any of the data, you can do the data processing. From the unstructured, from the unstructured, any text file, right? For example, you can read the data from the PDF also, right? You can read data from the PDF. For example, maybe you have the requirement, you have the n number of PDFs, right? N number of PDFs. From the PDF, you want to extract only that URL information, right? URL information. Still, you can use any PySpark code or Spark code or Python code, right, to extract that information, right? Or maybe you can use the scalar programming language. Your requirement, you want to extract all the URLs which are available in your n number of PDFs. But still you can use the Databricks. I mean, with the help of that any tool, either Python programming language or Scala. For example, just you search in the Google how to read the data from that PDF. The solution is available. Take that solution and implement. Maybe the solution is available in the Scala. Maybe Scala is having the good connectors to connect with PDF. Just assume, right? Then you can take, right? You want to implement some complex logic. The data is structured. The data is structured. You know how to implement that logic in the SQL point of view. You're having the very good knowledge in the SQL. So why should I waste my time, right, to think about a solution in Python or R or Scala, right? Already the solution is available in the SQL. Let me take out that solution and implement. Only the basic syntax have to change, right? Because 90% solution is available. Let me take out that solution and implement, right? Why should I waste my time, right, to think about either Python or Scala or program? Because solution is already available, because your data is structured. Maybe data is available in the file, right, complete structured data, but you want to implement some complex SQL transformation. That equivalent solution is available right in that Google. Then you can take that solution and implement, right? Ultimately your goal, you have to complete your solution, right? It could be any of the language, right? It could be Python, Scala, or SQL. Ultimately you have to deliver the code, you have to deliver the task, right? You can take out, right? You can take the solution, right? Anything, right? Here see Kafka event hub or IoT hub. This data lands in your data lake for long-term persistent storage in Azure Blob, right? These source systems, we can connect with the help of the Databricks. Even you can connect to blob storage, data lake storage, Cosmos DB, Azure SQL DB, data warehousing, right? Anything you can connect. You can connect with the help of the Databricks, right? You can perform that analytics, or you can do that proper ETL stuff, right? Proper ETL instructions also. You can apply on your source. You can write the data to your target system, right? So this is the history of your Databricks. Databricks, it was founded in 2013 by These three fellows. These fellows only implemented the Spark. The same team implemented the Databricks. Who had invented the Spark, right? The same team implemented the Databricks. All right. So Databricks is highly collaborative and scalable and multi-language support, or Python, Scala, and skill. Right. See, Azure Databricks as a managed service in Azure. See, best of Databricks, best of Microsoft. That is called Azure Databricks. In the simple terminology, Azure Databricks means best of Databricks, best of Microsoft. That is called Azure Databricks. This is the first part. This is the first part because that Azure 90% services are owned by that Azure, right? But this is the first third-party service deployed or hosted into the Azure ecosystem. Azure Databricks is the first party Microsoft service, that the result of unique year-long collaboration between the Microsoft and Databricks team to provide Databricks Apache Spark-based analytics service for big data point of view. Because especially Microsoft, they're very weak in ETL, right? They're very strong in ETL from on-premise, that is SSIS, right? But majority, especially that Microsoft project, if they want to implement the data warehousing projects, people will prefer the SS because they have the complete stack, right? Complete full stack, right? Like database, ETL tool, model, and reporting system. That is called MSBA, right? Right, people are because it's complete full stack, right? Full stack, they will use to implement the ETL in ETL, right? But this cloud is not a on-premise, right? It is a cloud. But how can I implement my ETL, right? That's why they collaborated with the Databricks, right? They collaborated with Databricks. Right? SSIC is on-premise ETL tool, but I need one cloud ETL tool, right? The cloud ETL tool. That the product name is Azure Databricks. Best of Databricks, best of Microsoft, right? Here the best of Microsoft means that Microsoft services, right? Azure Key Vault, Azure Active Directory, log analytics, right? Plus the blob storage, ADLS, DB, DW, right? These are the best of Microsoft to connect with these services from the Databricks, right? They work together, right? From the Microsoft team and Databricks team, they work together and they launch one product that is called Azure Databricks. Azure Databricks. Only that advantage Azure Databricks, right? You can easily connect with your Azure sources. You can easily do the your Azure Key Vault concept, right? Right, you can easily do that Azure Key Vault concept. You can easily enable your log analytics each and every second. What are the logs are generating, right? From the logs also you want to do that analytics, right? We can integrate with your log analytics also. Right? You can mean here Azure Active Directory also you can use to connect with your Databricks from access point of view, right? From the access point of view. So these are the especially features of your Databricks. These are the features of the Databricks. Right. Okay. Let me create a service in the Microsoft, the portal. In the last class, we discussed about the SQL DW, right? The SQL DW architecture. We discussed about control node and compute node, right? The control node and compute node. The same concept also available in the Databricks, right? Like driver node and worker node. But how can you create the Databricks service? Right? How can you create the Databricks service, right? Let me go and create my Azure Databricks. Alright, what are the resource group? But here we should select the workspace. Means your environment, workspace nothing but a kind of your environment. Each and every environment you can create one workspace. Each and every environment you will create the workspace. Within the development also you can create a multiple workspace, or environment wise also you can create the workspace like development, QA, pre-prod, production, right? Yes, you can create 4 workspaces, right? Within the one workspace you can work with multiple teams. Collaboratively, you can work with data scientists, data engineers, data analytics also possible, or you can create a multiple workspace for individual downstream system. Depends on your project. Depends on your project. That Azure Databricks, AIC. And, all right, let me use the pricing tier. 14 days free. At 14 days free. Let me use next networking. That let me click because I have selected only the workspace name and the location. Let me go and create. I selected the 14 days, the free trial. Right. If you observe, these are the different types of activities are available in ADF, right? If you want to execute the Databricks, or if you want to schedule the Databricks code, right? We have one Databricks activity, right? You can use either here Databricks notebook, means in the real time we'll use only notebooks, or in case your code entire is available in the Python, right? Only the Python related work, right? Then you can use the Python also. If it is a jar related, right? Jar, but majority will use it only that notebook. Majority will use it only that notebook to execute your ETL instructions, to perform your AC type 1, type 2, type 3, type 3, your upset logic, your big data analytics loads, right? Basically, here you're using ADF as a scheduler, right, or orchestration tool to execute your notebooks or Python code or other services, right? From the Databricks point of view, we'll use the notebook. Interviewer they may ask the question, which activity you have used to execute your Databricks code? Yes, we are using the Databricks. From the Databricks, the notebook activities, right? Notebook activities to execute your Databricks code, right? What's the next one? For example, let me drag this notebook. Let me drag this notebook. But how can I execute the Databricks notebook from the data factory? But how can I enable the connection, right? The connection is important, right? The connection means linked service, right? Anyway, the default will use that integration runtime only, right? Default auto result integration runtime. See here, the Databricks linked service. So this is kind of computing, right? Not a data store, right? Because Databricks is not a source, right? It's a kind of computing, right? It is a computing because there are two types of linked services available, right? Compute as well as the data store. Right? If I want to execute this Databricks, right, I need one connection, right? For example, if I want to read the data from the blob, I need one linked service because the connection is important. If I want to write the data to Azure SQL DB or DW, I need one linked service as a data store. But if I want to execute my Databricks is not a source or target, right? It is a tool. Right, the code, everything is available. Just you have to execute that code from the data factory because your data factory acted as scheduler, right? Acted as a scheduler, right? From the Databricks code, you're doing the proper ETL flow, right? Proper ETL flow, reading, processing, transformation, and writing the data into your target system. Already code is available. Just you want to execute, right? Then we need linked service. What kind of linked service? Compute linked service, right? Right? Compute linked service. So the directly you can create here, or you can go and manage. All right, there is a compute, right? See, see, these are the services, right? These are the computer. These are not sources, right? See, Azure did like just now we discussed, right? Use SQL programming language because your code is already available, all right? Just you want to execute that code from that ADF because your ADF is acted as a scheduler or orchestration. Azure function. The code is already available in the PowerShell or .NET or Python. Just you want to execute that code with help of that Azure function. Alright, your code is already available in Hadoop Insight, right? Pig or Hive. Alright, your code is already available in machine learning. Alright, your code is already available in your batch, right? PowerShell or some .NET code. Everything is available. Just you want to execute, right? Then we'll use the Databricks as a compute service, right? The Databricks is a compute. Interview they will ask the question, but how you will connect with your Databricks with help of the compute linked service. With the help of the compute linked service. Mean we should create the compute linked service, right? We should create the compute linked service. Means from the compute linked service, right? You will establish the connection between data factory to Databricks. Once you have the connectivity from data factory, you will execute your Databricks notebook because both are two different services, right? Both are two different services. Deployment completed. Let now see. There is a product at Azure Databricks service. Right, Azure Databricks service, or you can open your resource group. From the resource group also, you can open, you can launch Databricks. You can launch your Databricks. All right, just launch your workspace. Launch your same like your data factory, right? From the data factory author and monitor, right? Here also same. All right, launch. Once you open your Databricks, right? Then you should click launch your workspace. Launch your workspace. Let me launch my workspace. Let me launch my workspace. Right, this is your home page of your Azure Databricks. This is your home page of your Azure Databricks. Right, here you can talk about it in detailed documentation, the release notes, right? Right here, these are kind of shortcuts. If you want to create new notebook, or if you want to create table, or if you want to create the cluster, right? If you want to create the job, right? The machine learning related, right? Machine learning related models also you can create. So these are the different components are available in your Databricks workspace. Databricks workspace. The Databricks workspace. From the Databricks workspace, we can do the proper collaboration. Right. Here you will see the list of users, right? This Databricks is having that access to n number of people, right? That n number of people will be listed out under here. Right? You can see their code also. You can see their code also. You can see their code also from that users tab. Right? Means collaboratively you can work with all the users, right? Collaboratively you can work with all the users, right? In case if the code is right shared with all the team members, right? Then you can move the code to the shared folder. So this is very, very important because in the real time we'll execute code under only these are the folders like shared folder, not a users folder, right? In the shared folder, not a users folder, because users may or may not exist, right? For example, today I have developed one code, but tomorrow I may move out from this organization, right? If I'm executing my code from under my users, right? Definitely my program will fail, right? My program will fail. So shared means it's a kind of a common directory to all the users, right? All the here will not mention specific user, right? Will this is a kind of shared path details. This is a kind of folder details, kind of shared path details. If I'm talking about users, right? Here the users are available. For example, in this workspace having 10 users, right? The 10 users are available. From their individual users folder, they will develop the code, they will do the test. Once the code is proper, right, they'll move the code to the shared folder. They'll move the code to the shared folder because your workspace contains shared plus users. Here also you can create a number of folders. Here also you can create a number of folders. Just right click, right? You can create folder also. You can create your folder also possible. That users bit, right? Self development, right? Here I can do the self development. Once everything is code finalized, right? Yes, I'm not able to get any issues. The code is the final. I want to execute this code from data factory, or maybe I want to schedule the code from the Databricks, right? I want to move the code into that shared folder, right? Right, common folder. Then we'll move the code to from the shared folder, right? From the shared path, we can schedule the our Databricks notebooks or your Python code or Scala code. Here also we can do the schedule, but not a best practices. But in the real time, you can do the your self development under users. Once the code is ready, just you will move the code from your local to shared folder. Just only move, right? Will not follow the complex process. Just only will do the clone the code. Will clone the code from local to shared folder. Otherwise, you can develop the code directly here. Right? Nobody will develop the code direct here. Will people will develop the code into their local folders. All right. Once the code is everything finalized, they want to automate that code. They will move the code to the shared. But still, you can schedule or execute from under users also, but not a best practices. Not a best practices. All right. So this is your especially home. You can select your workspace or users also possible. Right? Otherwise, you can go to direct your workspace. If you go to the home, you can select your users or workspace. So what is the next one? What is the next one? If you see there is a data, right? There is a data. The Databricks also it will internally use the backend Hive tables. Hive tables. Because we discussed about one SQL concept, right? What is it SQL? Not a Oracle SQL, not a SQL Server SQL, right? It is a Spark SQL, right? Spark is if I want to perform any SQL operations, we need some tables, right? Without table, it is not possible to execute any select statement or insert or update or delete, right? If I want to perform the structured query language, we need basic table, right? But where can I create the tables? Right? Those tables we can create under this data folder. Under the data folder, these are your Spark tables, Spark internal tables, or Spark Hive tables, or Hive tables, or Spark internal tables. If you want to create any tables, the tables will be visible under the data folders. But these tables will be available on your only cluster. If the cluster is available, then only it is possible to access the data. Otherwise, it is not possible to access the data. What is the next one? What is the next one? Okay, Databricks, right? Databricks. But how can I write the data to any file system? Do we have any internal file system, right? Do we have, maybe I want to temporarily hold the data into that file system. Again, why should I go and dependent on my Azure Blob storage or Azure Data Lake storage? Azure Data Lake storage. Do we have any internal file system, right? Yes, even Databricks also they're having their internal file storage that is called DBFS, Databricks file storage or file system. But how can I open my Databricks file storage systems, right? Just go and click create table. There is a DBFS, right? Right, Databricks file storage. Databricks file storage. Here you can create a number of folders. From that n number of folders, right? You can create your all file systems. From this data, right? This is the path details. If I want to access the data from this inside the tables or some XYZ file, or uh, maybe outside I have the different folders. But if I want to access the data, we should select the right path details to read the data from your Databricks file system or file storage. If you want to create some intermediate file storage, we can use the your DBFS. You can use the your DBFS. Or if you want, you can upload your data, right? If you want, you can upload your data. Right? If you want, you can upload your data. Right? Now, if you want to access the data, right, I will use this path. from the Databricks. If I want to read the data from this file, right, I will upload. I can do the self development. Right, I can do the. For example, your data is available in one of the CSV system. If data is not ready, the data is not ready, but you want to implement some complex solutions. But data is not ready. But in between, you want to implement some kind of POC, right? So this is your expected data. You want to perform this complex transformation. You want to write the data into the some target system. But in between, you want to implement the POC. Right? Yes, you can create some dummy file system, but same structure, maybe dummy data or test data. Maybe you can take the data from development or production. Maybe you export the data into the CSV. On top of it, you want to perform the transformation. You basically want to implement one POC. Right? You want to consider some 5 to 6 files, right? Maybe the data is available in Oracle or Teradata. But dump the data into the CSV, take the data and upload into the Databricks file system. Then you can build your proper ETL information, right? Then you can showcase your POC results also. But if you want to consider the temporary file storage, right, will use the DBFS. We'll use DBFS, especially your internal log files. If you want to capture your error handling, bad records, right, people will prefer the Databricks file system, right? You're executing some code. You want to generate your logs information, right? Okay, the code started, code process, code loaded. In between the code field, right? Everything you want to capture the logs physically. You want to maintain the log, but where can I maintain the logs? You want me to maintain the log in the blob storage or ADLS? Why should I maintain again into that Azure storage? Those are business data point of view, right? But I want to maintain that log, right? Still, we can prefer the DBFS. Still, we can, I mean, especially in the real time, people will use the DBFS for bad records plus log files also they can maintain. One more reason, for example, maybe your Databricks, right? Your Spark, not Databricks, your PySpark or Spark is not having the right API. For example, best example, Excel. Or best example is Excel. But Excel is not a, we don't have any the right connector from the PySpark or Spark point of view. Then people will use the Python programming, core Python programming language to read the data from that Excel, create that pandas. From that pandas, they will convert into the Spark or PySpark APIs. Or maybe I have the one file system. I have the one file system. That extension is different. For example, some .xyz extension. But the .xyz extension, I don't have the right connectors. I don't have the right connectors. Maybe I'm not able to convert that connectors into that Azure Blob Storage. What is that alternative? Let me take that file from Azure Blob Storage ADLS. Let me upload into the DBFS, right, temporarily. On top of it, let me convert the data into that valid format, right? Then let me perform the transformations, right? Let me write the data to again my Azure storage. But I need one temporary storage, right? That the temporary storage is called your DBFS. If you want to hold your data temporarily into the file storage, you don't want to take Amazon S3 AWS point of view, Azure point of view, either ADLS, genuine or Gentoo, right? But you need one temporary location. You don't want to go to your main ecosystem for calculations. At that time, people will prefer the DBFS. DBFS. So these are the source systems you can connect. All right. These are the I mean, connectors, right? JDBC, Kafka, Redis, right? Azure Blob Storage, Data Lake, right? But these are the especially your partner integrations. If you want to connect with any click view, right? These are the kind of partners are available, right? If you want to connect with any system, right? You want to connect to any system, you can use, right? If you want to create the notebook from Azure Data Lake Storage, right? Azure Data Lake Storage, you can create your notebook automatically. The notebook will be created. It will come up with the proper code to connect with your data lake. Just you should provide the proper configuration details. Configuration details. This is one of the especially component of the data. From the data, you will see the tables as well as your Databricks file system. The very important. Yes. Now you can design that code, right? You can design the, okay, let me go and create one code. We discussed it is a multi-language support, right? Multi-language support, for example. Let me go and develop one notebook. Right. Let me go and create one folder or notebook. Let me create one folder. Right. Test notebooks. Right. So this is my folder inside. Right. User. Right. I want to develop one notebook. I want to develop one notebook. See what is the default language here? Python. From the drop down list, right? You're able to see Python, Scala, SQL, or right, because it is a multi-language support. You can create notebook any language. You can select Python, you can select Scala, you can select SQL, you can select R. So depends on your architecture design, right? In your project, you want to use only Python, either default language. You can select the Python, but on top of it, you can execute your Scala, SQL, R also possible. Right? If I'm selecting that Python. Right, there is a cluster, right? Interview they will ask the question, if I want to create any notebook, right, should I attach the cluster to my notebook? Is it mandatory or optional? This is not mandatory. This is not mandatory. Not mandatory to attach any cluster to your notebook. Now I don't have any clusters, right? You don't have access to any running cluster because I don't have any cluster. But still I can create my notebook, still I can do the design. Right? First notebook. Right. Let me go and create. Let me go and create. Okay, let me go and create. Now there is a tab in the top option. There is a detach, right? Here you can this same notebook, it is equivalent to your Jupyter notebook, right? Right. Same is equivalent to similar to your Jupyter notebook. Here you can write your code, right? Here you can write your code. Here you can write your code. Yes, if I want to execute this command or this cell, right? This command or this cell, I need cluster. Without cluster, right? Without cluster, it's not possible to execute your code. If you want to execute your piece of code from the Databricks in the notebook, cluster is mandatory. Without a cluster, it is not possible to execute your code. It is not. See in the drop down list right here, right? Not attached to your cluster. Select a cluster to attach. Right? Let me go and create a cluster. Okay, let me go and create a cluster. Either I can create the cluster here, alright, or I can go and create a cluster here. No. There are two types of cluster. Interactive cluster means all purpose cluster or job cluster, or we can create the pools also. Basically there are two types, interactive cluster or job cluster. But unfortunately in the free subscription, right, in the free subscription we don't have option to create the cluster. The cluster, it will talk about your infrastructure. The cluster, it will talk about your virtual machines. The cluster, it will talk about your basically infrastructure. From the free subscription, right? From the free subscription, they had given the only specific quota. If you want to create the cluster, the quota exceeded. But if we want to create the cluster, we need more resources, more infrastructure, more resources, more infrastructure. Let me go and create the cluster. We'll see that error message. That will see that error message. Right? We discussed the scale up and scale down, right? The scale up and scale down because enable auto scaling. If you enable auto scaling, right? If you enable auto scaling, there is a min workers and a max workers, right? Depends on your data volume or depends on the data volume, right? Either it will consider 2 or it will consider 8 or it will consider 2 to 8. Depends on your data. This is also one of the beauty in the Databricks. No need to come up with complex programming language or automation tools to scale up and scale down, scale up and scale down, scale up and scale down. If you enable this option, right, automatically the Databricks will be taken care. Okay, Pawan is processing this much of data, is enabling the auto scaling option, right? What is his min and max worker? So depends on the data volume, right? Let me go and create 4 workers. Okay, maybe this input 4 workers are sufficient. Let me go and use 4 workers. Now this data volume is very minimal, right? His minimum workers are 1, right? Let me use one. Is my workers are two, right? Let me use the two. Automatically, the Databricks will be taken care. That is not your responsibility. The Databricks responsibility. This is one of the beauty. Let me create one cluster name. Okay. Let me create one cluster name. Okay. Development workspace. All right. Let me use the high concurrency or standard single node. People will prefer the standard. High concurrency means if it deals with a huge amount of data, right? Let me use it. I'm not using the pool. So pool is a kind of reservation. Pool is a kind of reservation. In the last class, we discussed about the SQL DW. Based on the your data warehouse and compute, it will create the number of servers, the backend, right? Number of servers that create the backend. That's why DW is too costly, right? That's why DW is too costly because costly infrastructure, right? If you're considering that pool, means a kind of reservation. You're indirectly informing to your Azure, right? I'm creating into the one of that pool. In that pool, maybe I need some 100 VMs, right? 100 VMs at any cost. At any cost, if I'm going to create my cluster under this pool, if the pool is dedicated for the 100 VMs, your responsibility, you should arrange 100 VMs for this cluster, right? That is their responsibility. If you're going with the pool concept, your cost also very high because it is kind of advanced reservation, right? Kind of advanced booking of your VMs, right? For example, you're creating one cluster. It's not a pool. You're requesting to Microsoft to create maybe 10 VMs, right? And the time in the region, maybe the VMs are not available. At that time, it will go with the lower configuration. But you requested 10, but Microsoft, they were not given the 10 VMs. Maybe due to that, you have requested from that XYZ region. That XY region, that VMs are not available. That VMs are not available. Right? They will give the lower configuration. At that time, your data processing will be slow, right? If you're going with the pool concept, at any cost, they should facilitate that n number of VMs because that is the pool already you have advanced booking only, right? Kind of a bit costlier, right? Bit costlier than your normal one. What is the next one? What is the meaning of the Databricks runtime version? That Databricks runtime version, the combination of Spark plus Scala, the combination of Spark plus Scala. That is called your Databricks runtime version. Whatever the notebooks you are defining, right? You are creating or designing notebooks, right? You want to execute your notebook, right? Which Spark version you want me to use? Which is Scala version you want me to use? Let's see here. The runtime is 8.0 means the 8.0 they are using the Scala 2.12, Spark 3.1.1 option. Right? There are different types of runtime options are available. Right? Different types of runtime options are available. Right? Depends on your programming. Right? If you're programming machine learning point of view, people will take the machine learning related. If you're data engineering point of view, right? People will select the right data engineering. 6.5 or 7.5 depends. For example, let me take the 7.5. Let me take the my runtime version is 7.5, Scala 2.12, Spark 3.0.1, or you can take the latest one, right? So it means basically you want to execute your code. Basically you want to execute your code from this runtime version. From this runtime version. From this runtime version, you have to select it. What is the next one? We discuss enable auto scaling. Right? Enable auto scaling means it is kind of scale up and scale down. Right? This option will help out. This option may not help out. Right? When this option it will not help out. So when should I select the auto scaling? You're not 100% sure about your data, right? Because your data value you're not sure. Today 1 GB, maybe tomorrow 2 GB, day after tomorrow MBs, right? After 1 week more than 10 GB, right? Your input size you're not sure, right? Your input size is not sure, then we'll prefer that auto scaling. But your input size is known. Every day you're expecting approximately same data, close to 1 GB, close to 2 GB, or close to 3 GB. Known size, right? Known size. But why should I select that auto scaling? If you select that auto scaling, again it will eat some time, right? It will eat some time, right? It will check, okay, then it will check the data volume, then it will do the statistics. Okay, for this data, the backend process Okay, if it is this data input size is 1 GB, right? How many clusters we should select to perform this data processing, right? It will convert a complete physical plan into logical, then it will check which worker we need to consider to the data processing. But if it is known data size, if it is known data size, why should I hand over this much of complex process to my Databricks, the backend Databricks runtime? Known size, right? Always every day I'm expecting 2 GB data. You know, because you have designed your code, you know what kind of transformations are you processing, right? What kind of giants you're using, right? Whether it is complex calculations or medium calculations or simple calculations, right? You know, for example, if I'm dealing with two GB data, if you're performing some proper ETL, right, you're sure the data, right, the process took hardly 1 minute or 2 minutes, right? Already you did development, or already development. In the development you selected that only the two workers or one worker, two workers or one worker, you can finish your complete your data ETL processing, right? ETL processing, right? One worker is more enough, right? One worker is more enough. That is known solution. That is a known solution because you did development, you had executed a number of times, right? You have a number of times you had taken the statistics of the your workers. Then you realize, okay, if I'm considering one worker, the data processing took 10 minutes, I'm okay to wait for 10 minutes, right? Then don't select enable auto scaling. If I'm disabling the enable auto scaling, there is no min worker and max worker, right? That if I'm enabling auto scaling, then it is asking min workers or max workers. So when should I use that enable auto scaling? Your input is not known. Your input is not known. Maybe you're executing concurrent notebooks. You're executing concurrent notebooks, right? Parallel, parallel. You need more workers, but multiple notebooks, your data volume is not sure, right? You're executing 100 notebooks or 40 notebooks, 40 data sets, right? 40 data sets you're executing, 40 files or 40 source objects are you're executing. Maybe each and every object, the source data volume is different. Then go and use auto scaling. But your data volume is fixed, close to approximately 2 GB or 1.5 GB, right? Then don't select auto scaling. Then don't select auto scaling. Right? Then don't select auto scaling. Go with fixed workers. Next, terminate after 120 minutes of inactivity. Yesterday we discussed the same concept in the Azure SQL DW, a resume and pause option, right? Right. So why we had done resume and pause option yesterday? Because if you're not active, I mean, if you're not involving any operations on the SQL DW, you're not performing any data loads. You're not reading the data. But still, Microsoft they will charge, right? But the backend n number of VMs are executing, n number of VMs are back to online, right? Definitely they will charge. Definitely they will charge. That's why we had implemented a resume and pause concept, right? Whenever I need my DW, I'll bring to online. If I don't need, I'll make it to the path state, right? I'll make the same. The Databricks also same thing, right? Databricks also, if you select your workers, the Databricks units, the number of cores, it means the backend you're generating a number of VMs, right? Backend you're launching a number of VMs. Still the same concept, right? That's still the same concept. If I'm not using my Databricks code, if I'm not executing my Databricks code, right? Maybe last 2 to 3 hours, right? Last 4 hours or one day, I'm not executing anything. I'm not executing anything. For example, you're not running any operations. You're not running operations, right? Why should I need cluster, right? I don't need cluster, right? I'm not executing any load. I'm not executing any code, right? I don't need cluster, right? I should not create the cluster, right? If I'm creating the cluster, if my cluster is online, the backend n number of VMs are back to online, right? Your infrastructure also back to online. I don't need, right? I don't need my cluster. I don't need my cluster. If I'm not executing, if I'm not using my cluster, automatically the cluster should terminate, right? For example, if I'm not performing anything, right? Okay, next hour I'm not doing anything, I will not go and shut down the cluster because n number of people are using that cluster, right? For example, I'm using the cluster, Pawan is using the cluster, Suresh is also using the cluster. Okay, next 1 hour I'm not using. Blindly I will not go and shut down, right? Maybe they are also they're using, right? If I'm shut downing, it is major impact to their workloads, right? Correct. We'll not discuss internally, right? A Suresh are using the cluster, a Pawan are using. That we'll not discuss, right? If we three are not using, maybe next 30 minutes or next maybe 1 hour, next maybe 2 hours, automatically the cluster should terminate. Right? Automatically the cluster should. If you're not executing any data loads, if you're executing data loads, the data loads are taking 3 hours, the backend, the cluster, it will not shut down because the backend operations are executing on the cluster. If a cluster is actively involved some of that operations, it will not terminate automatically. But if you're not executing any operations on your cluster, right, you want to control the cost, then you should select this option, terminate after 120 minutes of inactivity. 2 hours, then you can change the option, right? You can change 30 minutes. In this way you will control the cost, right? In this way you will control the cost, right? You will create one interactive cluster or all purpose cluster, right? You create one interactive cluster or all purpose cluster, right? A number of people are working in the development. Maybe they are using the same cluster. They're using the same cluster, right? Maybe different cluster. Right? Your responsibility, select the right minutes, right? At 30 minutes or 60 minutes or 2 hours, right? If you're not involving any operations, if you're not involving any operations on my cluster, the cluster should shut down automatically after 30 minutes. Maybe next 1 hour I'm not involving any operation. After 1 hour I want to use my cluster, then the cluster is inactive state. Again forcefully you should restart your cluster. I will take 2 or 3 minutes time to restart your cluster. With the help of this terminate after that we can control the cost. We can control the cost. Right? So this option is available in Azure Databricks. The next, the worker type driver. Anyway, we'll discuss in the Spark architecture. Right. So we should select the, I mean, like the same driver and worker. Actually, we discussed compute node and control node, right? The control node is the initial entry. The compute node, it will execute your all the your MPP, right? MPP will divide into the multiple compute node, right? From the compute node, basically your code will execute, right? The control node is the initial entry, right? That is called a master node or slave node, right? I mean, compute node is a slave node, control node is a master node. Right? Here also same thing. The driver node is the initial entry of your Spark. It will receive the request from user or application. Then it will create one Spark context. The Spark context will work with your cluster manager or resource manager to execute your code with the help of the multiple worker nodes. That here in the real time we'll maximum use standard DS4. We'll use the standard DS4. Alright, the best configuration is 28 GB as a 14. 14 is very minimal. If you deal with the huge amount of data, right, the data maybe you need 28 GB, right? Not 14 GB. If you're using the 14 GB, maybe your process was failed with heap memory issue. Heap memory issue, right? Then you should select the right one because it depends on your data volume, right? Your data volume is very huge amount of data, but then you can select the high configuration. If your data volume is okay, maybe you're processing 1 GB data, 2 GB data, complex transformations, a number of objects, then you can select the 28 GB. These are the driver node and master node you should select. These are your additional options. If you want to create some logging that init script you want to execute, right? In initialization script, I mean before executing some code, right? Once start the cluster, right? In the cluster you want to feed some information, right? Then you have to create in script. Then you can talk about your tags also you can create any Spark related that you want to execute some XYZ feature. Maybe that XYZ feature you want to involve your Spark configuration variable. Right? You can involve. It depends on your configuration. Okay. Let me go and select. Let me remove auto scaling. Let me select one worker. Let me select one worker. Let me use the lower configuration. See the Python version. If I'm selecting that, automatically come Python version. Right? Let me use the latest one. Yeah. Now you're not using Python version. Basically, we take the latest Python version. Depends on your runtime version. Depends on your runtime version. Right? If I'm selecting into the, let me select 7.5. Let me select 7.5. Right. 14 GB, one worker. Let me go and create the cluster. Let me go and create the cluster. It's terminated. We'll go and check. Yep, terminated, right? Just see the error message. Right? Azure error message, operation could not be completed as it results in exceeding approved total regional course quota. Additional details, the deployment model, right? The current limit for, current usage for, additional required for, minimum some limit required yet, right? Because from the free subscription, right, we don't have options to create the cluster. They requested please go and raise some ticket to Microsoft to increase the quota, but they will not increase the quota. They will request you to go and do upgrade. Here, see, upgrade to premium, right? If you follow this instruction, right? If you follow this instruction, I mean, you can raise some support ticket. That you can raise some support ticket. Just copy paste that URL, open. I mean, you can submit your registration form. And basically, you can raise some ticket to Microsoft. They will connect with you, but they will suggest. They will ask what is your request. My request is I want to use the especially Databricks. That is a free trial, 14 days free trial. I want to create the cluster. I'm unable to create the cluster. This is the error message. Could you please help me out, right? I mean, you can raise the ticket. They will connect with you, but they will suggest. Please go and use that upgrade to premium. So we will not charge more. So this is a basic price. If you use this one, right, we'll charge this much, right? I mean, you can control your cost with the help of the lower configurations. But ultimately, their goal, they want to take that amount from you. But they will suggest, right, go to the upgrade to premium. If you do the premium, right, they will charge that amount. They will charge the amount. If you want, you can try. I mean, if you want, you can raise the ticket. You can connect with Databricks team to resolve these issues. But 90% solution, they will suggest you to go with the upgrade to premium. So one of the especially drawback in the free trial. This is a drawback in the free trial. From the free trial, right, there is no way to create the cluster. That option only we should go to that upgrade to premium. Upgrade to premium, or we should follow the proper process from the Databricks. If I want to create the cluster, right, which region we should select, what is the lower configuration, will your free trial option will allow to create a cluster, what is the alternate. I'm talking about only Azure Databricks point of view. Alright. Is it answer only upgrade to premium? Right? If you do upgrade to premium, definitely they will deduct that amount. Definitely they will deduct that amount. Because you are explicitly doing that upgrade to premium, right? If you select this upgrade to premium, if you select your right credit, your credit card details, if you submitting the form, right, then here workspace in the premium mode, in the premium mode, so they will charge that amount. They will charge that amount. But unfortunately, we don't have option to create cluster. If you don't have that cluster, right, there is no way to execute your workspace, right? There is no way to execute work. But how can I do the Databricks, right? How can I practice the Databricks basically? How can I do the Databricks practice? Because Databricks is not a Microsoft product, right? Right? Will your Databricks provide any free subscription, right? Yes, the Databricks also provided one free subscription that is called community Databricks. That is called not Azure Databricks. That is called community Databricks. The community Databricks not integrating with your Microsoft. Not integrating means from Data Factory, right? You will not execute your community Databricks notebooks. But from community Databricks, you can read the data from blob storage. You can read the data from ADLS. You can read the data from Azure SQL DB. Database is possible, but only from ADF, right? There is no way to execute your community Databricks notebooks. From community Databricks, right? You will not read your Azure Key Vault. From community Databricks, you will not use your Azure Active Directory authentication. From community Databricks, that you will not use the log analytics. But you can read and write the data to Azure Blob Source, ADLS Gen 1, Gen 2, Azure SQL DB, database. It is possible. Right. From commit Databricks, you can execute data factory pipeline also possible with the help of the REST API calls. But from ADF, right? From ADF, you want to execute that because this is Azure Databricks, right? Not commit Databricks, right? But if you want to execute Databricks code, it should be Azure Databricks, not community. So this is one of the especially disadvantage in the free trial, right? Free trial. We don't have option. We don't have option, but only upgrade to premium. But they had given the 14 days, but not sure. It's not creating, especially any cluster. If you want, you can go and check with Microsoft. You can raise a ticket. You can ask, yeah, I want to create the cluster. Is there any way to create the cluster? Do we need to change any region? Do we need to downgrade to any lower configuration? Right? What is the alternative way to create the cluster? Only way to upgrade to premium, right? Don't go to upgrade to premium. If they suggested yes, we have that option. Go and select this region. It is available. Just go and try. But don't select upgrade to premium. Anyway, we can do the practice in community Databricks, but only we can't execute the Databricks notebook from Data Factory. That is only one of the disadvantage from the community, right? We don't have the connectors to execute community Databricks from the ADF. But ADF, it will execute only Azure Databricks code. Clear, right? Any doubt? Any doubts? Even community Databricks also, we should create the same concept. Maybe these models are not available. From the community, this model is not available. These Azure machine learning models are not available. The rest of things are available. You can create the cluster, but only the lower configuration. Only the lower, not higher configuration. Not higher configuration. Only the lower configuration only we can create in the community Databricks. And what are the Databricks? Azure Databricks, everything you can execute 99% similar, 1% not integrating with your Azure services. Means ADF, key vault concept, log analytics, Azure Active Directory, these concepts are not available in the community. But you can develop your notebooks from the lower configuration. You can develop from the lower configuration. You can develop, but there is no way to integrate the community Databricks notebook in the ADF. Okay, so we'll discuss tomorrow how to subscribe to the community Databricks, right? We'll discuss tomorrow. We'll create some sample programs in the Python to execute, plus how to create the linked service, Azure Databricks linked service in that ADF, how to execute, ADB notebook from ADF, all right? How can I create the linked services? How many types of authentication methods are available? We'll discuss. Okay, we'll connect tomorrow 7 o'clock. In case if you don't have any doubts, we'll close that call.
Thanks, bro.
Okay, thanks everyone. In case if you don't have any doubts, we'll close the call. If you have doubts, please let me know.
Thank you, sir.